And we roll in. Hello everyone, I am your host, the Tater, and this is Quarantine. Let's talk about Star Trek, as in the franchise. Viacom CBS is in bad shape financially. There is talk they might sell off Star Trek. Hip hip hooray, huzzah, and can I get a hallelujah?
Do you see the light?
Kurtzman, Abrams, Bad Robot and Company have driven this franchise into the ground at trans-warp speed. Movie after movie, show after show, they have reimagined, punched up, and simplified the entire concept to the point where it's just weird, cartoonish shit and action thrown at you too fast and too furiously to give you time to take it in and think about it. Or else they give you entirely too much to think about it because the cognitive dissonance in your head forces you to ride the pause button and occasionally shout, "What the fizzbin did I just watch?"
Fizzbin.
Because of the broken canon. I'm hardly the first person to point out that J.J. Lost Ending basically used Star Trek as a showreel to get the Star Wars gig. The cinematic style was consistently Disneyfied, from the Apple Store lens-furred bridge to the goofy spaceship chase scenes to the half-assed campy jokes and the adorable sidekick. And mind you, there's plenty of camp in the original Trek, but it has a flavor that's all its own. A very nerdy one too, full of historical throwbacks, with the notable exception of Tribbles, which is yet another source for modern abomination, but let's put a pin in it and save it for later. Jar Jar Abrams' other sins include Uhura giving her captain, yes, her captain, the talk to the hand gesture, because I'm talking to my boyfriend here.
Are you really going to do this right now?
What never seems to require your undivided focus, I'm sorry, Captain, just 2 seconds, is us.
And essentially muscling bones out of the core comrade power triangle. So JJ could shoehorn in a love story that violates the simple sexual harassment standard of not porking people in the same chain of command. Somebody obviously didn't know about Nurse Chapel, herself engaged but carrying a torch for Mr. Spock, nor about Spock's wife back on Vulcan from an arranged marriage, thereby making a diverse love trapezoid. Missed opportunity much? Come to think of it, where the fuck was Nurse Chapel? You forgot the role played by Miguel Barrett Roddenberry, JJ? Really? And did Spock's wife die with the rest of Vulcan? Oopsie.
Oopsie doopsie. Oopsie doopsie doopsie.
Well, at least Winona Ryder got to witness firsthand not just the murdering of the Alien franchise, but also Star Trek.
Get us out now.
Locking volume. Don't move. Stay right where you are. Transport in 5, 4, 3, 2.
And no amount of Khan's blood is going to bring the franchise back to life like a dime store Tribble or Captain Kirk's toxically radioactive body in the JJ movie. Because science doesn't work like magic, nor television witchcraft. And of course I'd be remiss in not mentioning the constant Buffy the Vampire Slayer style dialogue that is utterly inconsistent with anything that came before. On this point, let me just say once again that Joss Whedon is the Eddie Van Halen of screenwriters, occasionally brilliant, mostly cheese, and responsible for inspiring an army of terrible imitators. Amongst them, obviously, JJ and Kurtzman. Kurtzman. A man who seems to draw delight and sustenance from wiping his ass on the cannon. Mind you, the writing has been on the wall going back to Star Trek The Next Generation, when the production crew started calling out sections of the script as technobabble, or eventually Treknobabble. This epithet was hung on parts of the writing that required an interest and a basic understanding of science. This is a nerdy show, mind you, and as such, there are plenty of people who just want to treat it like nerd food and offer it no respect. To that end, there's a whole tangent that I'm tempted to change heading and pursue about arguments that this being a kid's show, but much like watching Anakin Skywalker be burned horribly and forced into the Vader suit screaming, Star Trek has plenty of adult themes or graphic scenes that put children not so much behind the sofa as running, screaming to hide under their beds.
We seek peaceful coexistence.
Certainly nothing in Star Trek Picard is being held back to make this suitable for children. We have swearing and television. When it was established in canon previously that people barely indulged in either for centuries. We have a blatant disrespect for life and the inclusion of entirely too many body horror scenes.
Sheer fucking hubris.
To keep perspective, a lot of original Star Trek episodes follow the Lovecraft model of storytelling. They begin by discovering the remains of an incident, be it a log buoy, the psychic mind scream of a dying starship. Yes, it predated Obi-Wan's disturbance in the Force. A madman stowing away a shipment of supplies, or even a madman captain of a doomed ship. And then, having a slow reveal of the horror being the rest of the story. I remember being very scared by these when I was a child, and I loved it. Star Trek Voyager had organ farming, but they managed not to show anyone having their eyes ripped out of their head. Voyager was more or less, with all respect for technobabble, utterly evaporated if there was any left. They consistently phoned in their back-of-the-napkin explanations rather than trying to be clever.
This is what I was asked to build. 18 inches. Right here, it's specified 18 inches. I was given this napkin. I mean...
Forget this. Fuck the napkin.
Kurtzman has followed this to the logical conclusion.
I like science.
Which is clearly bullshit. Or yet another dig at the fans who pay his rent and actually care about the thing he apparently doesn't.
This is the power of math, people! Come on!
You are correct, Ensign.
The list of canonical aberrations that Kurtzman is responsible for is long, painful, and has been enumerated time and time again by other YouTubers already, so I'm just going to say that between Discovery and Picard, any notion of canon has had its tendons and its legs cut so that it's incapable of standing up on its own anymore.
Shh, darling. Trust me.
God's sake.
It's for the best.
Hey, please!
So where does this leave us? Fans like me have basically staged a walkout. I refuse to pay to watch this hot garbage. CBS isn't getting a dime out of me for their streaming service, and they should have learned a lesson from the Dave Network in the UK, who tried to do the same trick years ago, only with a Red Dwarf instead of Star Trek. It's a bad business decision to hang a whole channel off of one show. The advantage of dark web BitTorrents is that by the time you get hold of them, you have heard enough spoilers to allow you to properly clench your spleen hard enough to prevent yourself from erupting in a fountain of pure bile. And there are people who just don't watch at all anymore. And FOMO aside, these are the happiest people. They have just walked away with a head full of pleasant memories, rather than watching their best friend grow diseased and wither before their eyes in a protracted death spiral. So, what is there to be done? In my honest and humble opinion, I think that Viacom CBS should fire Bad Robot, Kurtzman, Abrams, a lot of them. They might even consider suing them, though I don't know how that would work. They made their own bed and it just happens to be on fire. At the very least, just stop production. It is time for damage control. I think they should instead throw money at the people who are making the 4 Years' War, aka Axanar. The filmmaker's stated purpose was to demonstrate that high-quality Star Trek films can be made on a low budget. They have proved that, so put them to work. The fan base loves it. And it's beyond annoying that it's taken over 6 years to get the next installment, largely due to legal wrangling.
And they all wanted one thing.
The greatest challenge laying before us is to do what must be done without undoing the dream of the Federation.
Hope.
For myself, I have but one fear: destroying the dream of the Federation. Compared to such a loss, I do not fear the Klingon Empire!
Why is Star Trek important? And what have they been getting wrong? The smartphone or tablet that you are statistically likely to be watching this on exists because of Star Trek. Kids like me grew up to be engineers and work with technology because they had Mr. Spock and Scotty as role models. We invented cell phones, stun guns, beam weapons, data cartridges, teleconferencing screens, and medical scanners, because we were imitating props made out of wood on a 1960s era TV show. The idea of having these things in real life was irresistible, and once we saw it, we had to have it or make it ourselves.
Scotty. Energize. Beam me aboard.
Hello?
Hello, Neo. Do you know who this is?
Mr. Wizard! Get me the hell out of here!
Name one thing that inspires people in any of the new movies or TV shows. I challenge you. It doesn't exist. Because they are no longer showing a hopeful future that inspires people and revolves around exploration. They're all about action sequences and conflict. One big thing that completely fell apart for Viacom CBS under the Bad Robot era is Star Trek merchandising. I think that this is because there are no new iconic ships, nor inspiring gadgets. As I mentioned before, and worst of all, no genuinely likable characters. Ultimately, though, the big problem that Star Trek has to come to terms with is its age. Canonical problems have been a thing from the very beginning, and there's plenty of big oops, cringe moments.
Your world of starship captains doesn't admit women. It isn't fair.
No, it isn't. You punished and tortured me because of it.
But in truth, all of the aging science fiction shows suffer from the advancement of science. As humanity learns more about the universe, a lot of the older stories don't age so well. Take, for example, the idea of artificial gravity. How is it possible that all the ships have it and none of them have thought to weaponize it? Where are the gravy guns? Something as simple as a rapidly shifting oscillation in the field could tear matter apart. And the answer is that none of the writers thought this through. They just couldn't make the crew weightless due to production costs. That's what the idea for the transporter came from, too. Yet another underutilized potential weapon system. For example, why didn't Captain Archer, who was desperate for better armaments, ever try using what he had on board to improvise? I suspect that because if he did, then we would wonder why they didn't keep using it in the future. And that Trek is showing its age, and the new producers don't care enough to acquaint themselves with the majority of what came before them. This is only made worse by dropping the episode format and going for the long story arc.
As for me, things have started to feel a little episodic.
Worst of all the format issues, however, is the aforementioned notion of conflict. Gene Roddenberry had a rule. The crew didn't have interpersonal conflict. That is because they live in a hopeful future. This was dropped in Deep Space Nine and in Voyager, and in doing so, the darkness crept in. The hope was given limits, and slowly but surely, the dream started dying the death of 1,001 paper cuts until we are left with...
Shut the fuck up.
This, to me, is lazy writing. Falling back on political intrigue and carving up the galaxy map with borders, as if the vastness of space could ever work like that.
Do you know what the trouble is?
No.
The trouble is Earth.
Really?
On Earth, there is no poverty, no crime, no war. You look out the window of Starfleet headquarters and you see paradise. Well, it's easy to be a saint in paradise.
To quote the immortal Douglas Adams, space is big, really big. You just won't believe how vastly, hugely, mind-bogglingly big it is. Of course, Disney will probably copyright strike me for that, assuming that I don't get it in the neck for the rest of this video. But this is being used for the purpose of criticism with satirical jokes thrown in. So, fair use seems reasonable. But then again, Disney ruins everything, including the beloved Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. But I'm not talking about Disney, I'm talking about Viacom CBS. They are at a crossroads. Are they going to keep making a show called Discovery where they don't seem to discover very much? It doesn't seem profitable. Are they going to fire everybody and retool production the way that I and many others would like to see, to change their focus to one of a hopeful feel-good future again where people can truly escape the misery and conflict of their own lives for an hour and dream of what might be? Somehow I doubt that. It would be like an admission of failure. It seems much more likely that they will blame Star Trek itself for their failures and sell it off as a poisoned property, making even more references to what they call a toxic fan base. And of course, that is a business practice I simply cannot truck with. Does no one make an effort to understand audience demographics anymore? I mean, beyond the wishes of the Chinese Communist Party, that is. Why would you go out of your way to further insult the loyal customers that you took for granted and drove away in your efforts to capture people who never had an interest in the show before? That just seems like bad business to me. And really, it should be expected. Because closet communists can't be competent capitalists. And while I don't think that the board of Viacom CBS are closet communists, I find that the production people who tweet insults at the fan base along with accusations of misogyny, racism, and transubstantiated phobias actually are. And I want to hang a picture of Joe McCarthy in all of their bathrooms. So to all of you who agree with me on the points that I have made, I will suggest that in the meantime, have a look at Prelude to Axanar. I believe the next installment is coming soon, as I've been following the production online. And better yet, if you want a new science fiction show to sink your teeth into and you haven't yet seen it, I highly recommend The Expanse. It is by no means the Gene Roddenberry future, but neither is a show where they are largely confined to a wooden soundstage. They embrace science more faithfully than any other science fiction out there today. They don't call it technobabble. And diversity isn't a message that they slam you over the head with, it's simply baked into the human species. It is gritty and dark and full of action, but they also give it time to breathe and have high concepts galore. In closing, I will appeal to Viacom CBS to either retool your production without Bad Robot and Company, or else sell it to a company that will. We have seen the results of their work on Star Wars. Why would you ever let them touch your company again after that fiasco? I know that what I'm saying is contentious, and I am open to being roasted alive and taken to task in the comments. School me if you can. I really want to know what you think about this. As always, thank you for listening and watching, and bye for now.